If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, come on. That is like, if you're stranded on an island, like what would,
That was the next question.
Oh, come on. Hey, everyone. This week I'm doing a Q&A video, and I actually haven't read any of your questions yet because my producer, Laura, wouldn't let me. So we're all going to hear them for the first time. Thank you so much for sending them in. And the voice you're going to hear off camera is going to be her asking me your guys' questions. So here we go.
Two main shows that you were on for a long time are that 70s show and Orange is the New Black.
Yes.
Can you talk about how like the casts were different, like the family feel that you had? Like you always talk about Orange family, and then I know that you're really close with your 70s castmates. Like how is that? What are the similarities? What are the differences?
I think the main thing was that it was just two very different points of my life. I started that 70s show, like I mentioned earlier, when I was just turning 18 years old. And then I did that show for 8 years. So, the first part of my 20s, which are very formative years, were while I was on that show. And we were all around the same age. So we were all going through all these kind of changes of like becoming working adults and everything together. And it was amazing. And we were all really supportive of each other. And it's like you never really heard any crazy stories with that cast because it was just, we were all so green and new. And we all just kind of like came up together, and it was really great. And David Traynor was always a wonderful influence on us. He was our director for every episode for 8 years, except for the pilot, which a guy named Terry Hughes directed the pilot of that show. But David was always such a great influence on us, and it was a very like familial environment. And then right after that, right after I wrapped that 70s show, I actually went on to a show called October Road. And October Road was my first show that I'd ever done on location because we started filming that in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was my first time like being on a show with another big cast, but I wasn't at my home. I was on location, and that was a whole other world to learn. It was like if 70s show was like my high school into college education, like this was like right out of college, like in the world, you know what I mean? Like new cast, I was playing a young mother on that show, which I loved. And that show was so much fun. And I did that for 2 years. And that was also a wonderful cast. I've been so blessed with the people I've worked with. That cast was awesome. We're still super tight too, that whole cast. And then after that, I did Are You There, Chelsea? I did movies filtered throughout, but these are just the main things. And then Are You There, Chelsea again was wonderful. And I was the lead of that show. So that was really nice to be able to like set the tone of the whole thing. And it was a very wonderful and warm environment, and I just loved it. And then, you go into something like Orange, which is like lightning in a bottle that you can't ever predict a show is going to do. Like I'd been so blessed to be a part of these other projects. And then 70s was a big deal in its own kind of way because it was one of the last long-running sitcoms. You don't have a lot of those anymore, besides like The Big Bang Theory and whatever. But back then it was like Us and Friends and Everyone Loves Raymond. And now with everything and all these streaming services and so many things pulling people's attention, it's hard to get those kind of like stable comedies that like everyone comes home and they watch together. And one of the best compliments I ever got from 70 Show was this man came up to me and he's like, "Thank you so much for bringing my family together." Because he's like, "My kids are off doing their own thing, but the time we come together is when we all come together and watch your show as a family." And he's like, "So thank you for that." And that is, especially now that I have kids, I'm like, I get how important that is, and that's wonderful. So then, to be at this, so 70 Show was like the last part of, I feel like, all those types of shows. And now, to be on Orange, which broke so many barriers, and we just touched on so many incredible things, and it was so much bigger than just an acting job. Also, I'm directing it on it too, but it was just so much bigger than the job itself. It was those things don't come along very often, and for a lot of actors it doesn't happen for them at all in their career to be part of something so special like this. So I know how special it is, and I don't take that for granted because I've been doing this for a while, and I know how when you're on something that's more than just an acting job, and it's social commentary. It's we're just telling stories that are, nothing is taboo. This is a whole other like wonderful group of women and men. And we're all in a very different time in our lives, like a lot of us are having children for the first time and, getting married and starting all of these other firsts in our life while we're all on this show together. And the show is also a huge opportunity for a lot of these actresses in a different way where it was their first big job, and it's just been amazing for all of us. So I think the main differences are just like these milestones in your life, like since I've been on this show, I've gotten married, I have a child, and it's just, I've directed 3 of them, and, and these women are gangsters, and it's amazing to work with them every day.
What is something that you've learned from your castmates on Orange?
Taylor is such a wonderful actress. I tell her this all the time. Even last week, I'm like, girl, she's so good. One thing is because I really learned while I was on the job. I remember doing this movie, just to backtrack for a second, and then I'm going to catch up to my point. But I did this movie called Come Early Morning, and I worked with this actor who was really good in this movie. His name is Jeffrey. And I remember Jeffrey, it was one of my first movies, and I remember Jeffrey saying to me, he was like, stop running away from the camera. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, when you're on screen, just be there. Like, people want to see you on screen. Stop trying to run away all the time. Because I would basically like do my lines and then like get off camera as quickly as possible. And he was like, don't do that. Like, like don't. Like, and it was funny because I started realizing like even though I'd been on 70s for so long, when a movie is a very different thing, because 70s show is like a play, you have a 200-person studio audience, there's 4 cameras, they're not up close and personal, they're like pretty far away, and you're basically like doing a play. And that world I was like so comfortable in. But then when you're doing a movie, it's like one camera like up in your face and you're just like, what's going on here? Like, it's totally different. And so as an actor, I've literally thought about that from time to time where I'm just like, why am I trying to just rush and get off camera? I just wanted to run around behind the camera and see what the crew guys were doing. Like, watch what the director was doing. That's basically why I was trying to run away. Taylor is so wonderful. And she's so just like relaxed on camera. Like, she and I would be doing these scenes with her, and she's just very like, she like breathes and just is so wonderful. Her emotion is so tangible and palpable. It's like right there. And I always just love working with her. Thank you guys so much for all of your questions. We're going to cut this up in a few different videos. So subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you can know when we post a new one. And thanks so much for watching, and see you guys next time.